Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving my reaction to Khamzat Chimaev and the new for the UFC middleweight title as he beat Plessis via unanimous decision. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. Oh, and if you wanted to join the Patreon, you can request any kind of combat sporting related content. I really appreciate all the members in which we've had already, and the link will be in the description. Again, it really supports the channel. Thank you very much. Now let's get straight into it. And again, like I say, it was a unanimous decision for Khamzat Chimaev. I said, alongside of many others, that Khamzat was going to be the guy to be able to defeat Dricus's awkward style and to be able to get the win, but I don't think anybody realistically expected it to go the way that it did. I mean, everybody was questioning Chimaev's conditioning, and that was something in which was kind of the main focus of criticism for Chimaev during fight week and just the general build-up as a whole, because of what we'd seen from him in past fights. Of course, the Usman one and the Gilbert Burns one being the two that stand out. And I mean, he basically just highlighted how good his stamina is and silenced any of them doubts just from this fight alone. And he did that in such impressive fashion. He absolutely dominated the fight. I don't think, any challenger realistically has dominated the champion like that in a long time. Realistically, that was, like I say, so just dominant, and especially a champion like Dricus, who has beaten, a good couple of names in Adesanya and Sean Strickland. Again, maybe not the most convincing of champions in the way of somebody compared to like a Islam Makhachev, for example, or an Elliott, but still somebody who has been on a very good run and has got a lot, or had a lot of momentum with him. And yeah, Khamzat was just able to nullify him. It seemed like Dricus just couldn't handle the wrestling ability of Chimaev at all. Chimaev dominated him, continuously managed to get him to the ground, and then even on the feet for the most part was able to have success. And it seemed like every time that Chimaev went for the takedown, there was actually nothing that Dricus could do. He tried to scramble at times and he just couldn't stop Chimaev's just coming forwards onslaught, and it wasn't, enough pressure for him to be able to get a submission or anything. He went a few times, went for a few different techniques, went for the crucifix, tried to get his arm under the chin as well, and again that didn't work at times. And so he was still trying for all these different things whilst also just beating up DDP's face. He was going for the elbows, he was just beating him up on the ground, and still, Dricus stayed in there. And like I say, he was getting dominated. And I mean, a lot of fighters could have just mentally bowed out and kind of just tapped out. But like I say, he kept trying, and in that fifth round, he had a bit of success himself in that final kind of minute of the final round, and managed to get him on the ground and try and go for a last kind of gasp submission attempt himself, DDP on Chimaev. But that still wasn't enough. I saw a comment which said if it was a 15-round fight, then Khamzat would have been screwed. But that was quite funny. But yeah, it was just, like I say, such a dominating performance. He went for, I think, 12 takedowns, over 500 strikes, I believe, with most of them just being on the ground. And then, I think he got the second highest or something like that, a crazy amount of control time, in which, like I say, was just up there with some of the best that we've seen in the UFC. And inevitably, that is what Khamzat Chimaev has shown that he can do now. That was another level to his game, a level in which we haven't had to see yet. And I mean, credit to him. A lot of people were saying perhaps it was a bit of a boring performance, but that was, like I say, probably his best performance to silence, like I said, any doubters and anything like that. And in DDP showed that he wasn't just going to get walked over and walked through, but he just couldn't handle Chimaev at all. And now, realistically, there's not many fighters there. The middleweight division's stacked, but there's not that many fighters in which fans are really intrigued to kind of see him up against, because they just don't know who's going to be able to beat somebody like Chimaev. Chimaev easily could go on an amazing run in the middleweight division where he ticks off loads of names and really tries to cement himself because there is loads of names there available. I mean, you look at the names, we've got Imavov Barrio fighting soon, probably the winner of that. I think Barrio versus Chimaev would be a good fight. But then there's also, of course, you know, your Derridas as well. Robert Whittaker's still floating about. So is Adesanya. Sean Strickland's still about, even though he's seemingly banned at the moment. And then, you know, you've got guys on the come up as well, like an Anthony Hernandez, who just last weekend had an amazing performance against Roman Dolidze. So, again, there is plenty of options for Chimaev to be able to go through. And he was able to make the weight well. I think he came in 2 pounds underweight, which was a really nice, kind of refreshing look. And I think that really did, you know, restore hope in fans for, you know, seeing Chimaev succeed. I mean, possibly he might even move up into the lightweight division, the light heavyweight division at some point himself, Chimaev. But again, I think this is just the start of great things for Chimaev. Obviously, like I say, if he doesn't get ill or things like that, you know, then I think he can really go on to great things. I mean, I think he's got a great team around him now. He seemed to team up with some new coaches and things like that. So again, like I say, I think that's just benefited him a lot more because they seem to focus on, you know, not overtraining and things like that, which is always beneficial as well. And it seems like he's got such a good kind of mindset now, and again, it just looks like an unstoppable Chimaev in my opinion now. And I think obviously he was looking unstoppable before when he was knocking everybody out or, you know, submitting everybody in round one, but now he looks even more unstoppable because he's silenced any kind of doubt in which the fans have had. So again, you know, what weakness does he really have? We're not entirely sure. You know, fans don't know anymore. So again, like I say, that's just again cementing, showcasing a great performance, and now the new champion. Moving on to speak about the co-main event, of course, Lerone Murphy did something which was surprising and, you know, caught the fans off guard as well by beating Aaron Pico via TKO in round one. I mean, he came in on 3 weeks' notice. Aaron Pico has been training for a long time for his UFC debut. He was meant to fight Evloev. I think you got to give a bit of credit to Pico as well because I think that the Murphy fight was actually a harder matchup stylistic wise than an Evloev was because Murphy is such a good striker and mover on the back foot. And I mean, he came out good. He was landing good strikes, Pico, and he, you know, was able to get him to the ground a couple of times. And Murphy did well to get back to his feet, but, you know, Pico was putting him in bad positions. But what I liked from Murphy was just the ease in which he was able to switch stance. And that really did set up that spinning elbow in which he eventually landed, which was a brutal strike and inevitably, of course, was enough to be able to knock him out, you know, pretty much there and then. He didn't need to go up for the follow-up shot, but it didn't seem to land that badly. So, yeah, that was just a brutal knockout. And again, just not what fans have been getting used to from Lerone Murphy. He's been somebody who kind of moves around, picks off his shots well, bit of a sharp shooter, you know, like I say, just continuously moving on his bike and things like that, and able to grind out and pick out a unanimous decision. But if he's got that timing down, then I think he can really have a lot of success, and we'll have to wait and see. But that was the best performance I've seen so far from him. And again, you know, another fighter coming from Bellator who has been given an opportunity against a top contender and hasn't been able to do it. Aaron Pico might be the last one that they kind of allow for that to happen with for at least a little while, because it's now 3 for 3 in a row basically, where we've had of course Patchy Mix, we've had Patricio Pitbull as well, and now Aaron Pico, all come unsuccessful against these top contenders. And Aaron Pico did look good at times, like I say, and I think he will possibly still be able to have a decent career in the UFC, but he just couldn't live up to the hype on his first fight. And again, maybe it will limit and restrict the UFC from doing this, just like say, inviting these new fighters into the division and giving them good opportunities high up on cards. Moving on now to speak about Carlos Prates TKOing Jeff Neal, again with another spinning elbow. And like I said, that was in round 1 as well. You know, very kind of similar to an extent as that of Lerone Murphy. I mean, Prates was looking better on his feet and he was looking sharper and quicker, and that was something in which I was kind of wanting to see a bit more of from him, and it was really nice. Yes, I still think that, you know, Prates, we haven't seen a tremendous amount good of his wrestling, and I think if he is moving up in the rankings, he probably will have to, you know, deal with that at times as well, and, you know, be able to have to handle that, and that's what Ian Gary kind of exposed a bit. But still, he was able to move around well, slip a lot of shots from Jeff Neal, and, you know, Jeff Neal was allowing Prates to get his timing down, kept him at a distance nicely, timed him very well coming in on multiple occasions, Prates, and I think Jeff Neal, his time at the kind of even lower end of the rankings is kind of coming to an end now, and I don't think that knockout, of course, is going to do him any good. So perhaps we might not see Jeff Neal in too many more fights, and he probably will have to fight an unranked guy next. But for Prates, that's put himself back in a really good position. I mean, obviously, he had a first round TKO, then he went on to fight Ian Gary, now he's had a first round TKO again, getting himself back in a hyped up position again, you know, getting the fighting nerds back in a good position. You know, there was Oles Gajuk as well, who also got a TKO in round 1 from fighting nerds on this card. So again, like I say, there's even more hype behind them now, and he might be able to get another couple good fights. Maybe a him versus a Buckley, or maybe him versus a Leon Edwards could be a good fight to make in the welterweight division. Two guys who I'm sure, you know, they are coming off losses, but I'm sure they would want strikers. And again, Prates might be able to feed into that and kind of fit into that slot nicely. So again, Prates might be limited with his wrestling from what we've seen so far, but has looked, you know, much improved in my opinion with this fight, with his striking and that buzzer beater cold kind of knockout, where the walk-off knockout was very, very nice to see, and then him smoking afterwards in the press conference was funny. And then moving on to Michael Venom Page winning via unanimous decision versus Jared Cannonier. I actually thought that Cannonier would win this fight. Of course, he came in excellent condition, and I thought you'd just be able to grind out a good victory. And I mean, I saw Michael Venom Page do an interview with Demetrius Johnson in the build-up to his fights against Jared, and he was kind of saying that his mindset is always just more so to entertain than that of to actually go out there and do anything he can to kind of win. And that is kind of showcased through the fact that he would rather not go down and try and risk, you know, putting himself in a wrestling position. He will always kind of let you come back up to your feet. And, you know, he didn't do that again. He didn't try and chase down Jared Cannonier on either of occasions. But, I mean, it probably was his best performance in the UFC this so far. As, he, of course, you know, it was a 29-28, but he dropped Cannonier twice really nicely with some really nice hands. And I think his speed is really getting shown at a high level that it can cause fighters problems. Do I think he's better at the middleweight division? I think so. I think the power carries a bit better at the middleweight division. So, you know, that fight, the fact that he dropped Cannonier in 2 rounds, it might fill him with more confidence to try and campaign in the middleweight division, because if he gets ranked there, then he's in a really good position after beating Cannonier. So, you know, there's quite a few wrestlers in the middleweight division, but him versus an Adesanya, I think, could be an amazing fight, to be honest. I mean, two, you know, awkward, tricky kind of kickbox type strikers, that could be a really good matchup, and I would love to see that. And so maybe that could be the next fight for an Adesanya. Again, you know, I'm sure Adesanya would want not a wrestler, and probably he would probably welcome a bit of a fight like that with Venom Page. And of course, you know, Venom Page has the big amount of eyes on him from British fans as well, so he's got enough kind of big enough stature to fight someone like an Adesanya, who will probably only be wanting them bigger matchups at this point. So again, if Page wants to stick around in the middleweight division, which he said he wasn't too sure on if he actually wanted to do it before this fight, but, you know, now he might want to. And again, like I say, I think there is at least a couple good fights there for him. Moving on to speak about the final fight, which I'm going to be speaking about. That is Tim Elliott winning via submission in round 2 versus Kai Asakura. It was an upset win for Elliott. People did think that Asakura would be able to come through and win. But again, another guy from another organization not being able to have success in the UFC, probably the quickest rise and fall out of the UFC rankings. I don't know if he is going to fall out the UFC rankings with this performance, but he might do. I mean, he didn't look bad, Asakura, at all. He was having some success with nice kickboxing skills, and he was avoiding in that first round the weird and tricky and awkward Elliott strikes in which he was throwing, the spinning shots in which he was going for, and he was avoiding them nicely, Asakura. But as soon as it went down to the ground, Elliott slipped that right, went and took him down in the second round, and then it was, pretty much all she wrote, because Asakura just hasn't been able to have that level of experience of ground game to be able to deal with any kind of guys who are wrestlers in the division. There probably is a few good strikers in which he could face in the division of the flyweight division, Asakura, but are they just going to start giving up and coming contenders at this point, because he is coming off back-to-back losses, and that was against a guy in Elliott who he was expected to beat and was already a low-ranked flyweight. Maybe that might happen. He might be, having to really work hard to get himself in a good position. I'm sure they won't just give him a striker because he wants a striker. Basically, I don't feel like he's earned it. But for Tim Elliott, I don't really know. I mean, he can try and stake another claim into it, getting himself into a good position in the division. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe an Ochoa fight could be a good fight, or an Almabayev perhaps could be a good fight. There's a few possible matchups that could be made there. But that was still a good performance in a showcase of good wrestling. I just don't know if he should be going for these interesting, awkward, weird spinning attacks anymore. I think he should stick to his wrestling, in my opinion. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video. Subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.